for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start off with any public comment.
Never done this before. Do I come up here?
Come on up.
All right.
Yep, kind of state your name and then your purpose.
I sit down.
Let's try to keep it to like 3 minutes or so.
Sounds good. Okay. My name is Nick Olson. I live in Litchfield Township. I'm a farmer there. And I'm here just to talk quick about the solar moratorium. I unfortunately wasn't able to make it to the meeting on the 6th. I had a conflict, so it seemed like this was the chance to quick and just interject. I also have two kids. I have a 7th grader at the middle school and a 4th grader at St. Philip's School, which is mostly why I'm here, I think, when I think about solar in the future. But I just wanted to say we put up a 35 kilowatt system on our farm last fall. Worked with Meeker County and worked with the utility, and it was great. And I've had a fair amount of people come and inquire after that about how the process was, because they are interested also in Meeker County, so I think it's something that I'm interested in. So I read the moratorium, and I'm not awesome at, filing through all of that language. But there were a few things that I had a couple questions on, and I was wondering if I could just ask 2 or 3 questions. Allowed, or how does this work?
You can ask the questions. We may be able to answer them. We may not be able to. Someone may have to follow up with you.
Perfect. Sounds great. Okay. So my biggest question was I wasn't sure what the definition of a solar farm was. I know like when I drive out west, I see these very large solar things on acreage, and then I know that we have a small array on our farm, and I just didn't know what the definition.
The moratorium deals with systems that are larger than 100 kilowatts.
Larger than 100 kilowatts.
Yes.
Okay. So there is. So for a residential system like ours, those would be exempt from that.
We only have solar gardens in Meeker County currently, because they're 1 megawatts or less. So that's, if you have one.
So if we have 35 kW, that's considered a solar garden under this moratorium.
KW.
It's considered, the ordinance considers large systems and small systems.
Gotcha.
Large systems are larger than 100 kilowatts.
Gotcha.
That's what the moratorium was
So
dealing
the
with.
moratorium does not include residential under 40 kW.
Correct.
Okay, that was my biggest question. And then my other question was, it was a little unclear to me how solar was considered I have wrote it down, a threat to public health and safety in the interest of public safety and general welfare. And I guess I was just a little confused about that.
So public health, safety, and welfare is the county's authority to be able to handle any sort of zoning regulations. So what the board was considering was the welfare of the community, and particularly thinking about aesthetics and the use of land. And so as they look at kind of the big picture of how do these fit within our larger land use considerations, that's where the ability to look at public health, safety, and welfare comes in. It's not that they are inherently dangerous to public health, safety, and welfare, but it is more, that is the standard in which we use to be able to determine things like the location of where these can be placed.
Okay, super helpful. And then the last question that I had was, as this plan moves forward, I read in the language that it said that there will be a study and then there will be discussions and hearings, and I'm asking how does a public individual like myself stay involved and engaged and know when these things are happening? That would be my last question.
So the Planning Commission is doing the work to study the issue. Then they'll be holding a public hearing on their proposed recommendations in the coming months. I would connect with our planning and zoning office downstairs, and they'd be able to make sure that you get notified. But it will be publicly noticed. The hearing will be publicly noticed in the paper.
In the newspaper?
Yep.
Okay. That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In regard to that, as I read the moratorium,
Well, I think we should just stick to what he has.
That's
and
not
we'll
on the
listen
agenda
on,
for today.
Because we wanted to stick with what his comments were and move on. I think Andrew did a good job of answering them. A lot better than me, so I'm glad he spoke up. Thank you.
I'm going to take off because I read the rest of the agenda and it wasn't all that.
Boring. It's all.
Part of our new thing is if you publicly comment, you have to stay.
I didn't do that in the notes.
I get through that in there quick.
Thank you for your work. And your
We haven't approved the agenda.
Told me to-
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Oh, we can add.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
there you go.
Anybody else? for public comment? All right, let's move on to the agenda, looking for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the agenda as presented.
All right,
I will second that motion.
Steve and Paul, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passed. Let's talk consent agenda. Andrew,
Mr. Chair, I think we have the shortest consent agenda since we started the consent agenda.
I like it.
The February 6th board meeting minutes, approval of Health and Human Services County and Hospital accounts payable, and acceptance of a van donation and approval of a payment offset. That is the consent agenda.
All right, any questions on the consent agenda?
Just a comment on the van. We had the van was totaled, the old van. So now we have relatively, we'll end up with two pretty new vans in the fleet.
Correct.
And I was talking to Vets Council a little bit, so, I think you can come up, yeah, well, maybe I'll let you detail it a little bit, cause, the other van looks very sharp when it's wrapped. This one sounds like they're gonna do the same thing to it, and I'll let you explain it in better detail than what I got going here, but.
So, as you mentioned, Steve, the van was unfortunately, involved in an accident and ended up being totaled. That was on the 6th of December. The driver was only in it. He'd already dropped off the veteran to a VA directed appointment, and, he was at a stoplight. It was red at the time, turned green, and he was in a line of cars, and then someone, when they just took off, from the green light, someone in that line stopped really quick. He was only going about 3 miles an hour. The vehicle in front of him had a receiver hitch with in there, and when he impacted the back of that vehicle, it went right through the front and set off 3 airbags. Nobody was hurt. So anyway, that's what happened. Very unfortunate, but fortunate that nobody was hurt. No veteran in there at the time. And then as far as the 2 new vans, yes. The Meeker County Veterans Council is already, they authorized the approval, or they authorized the purchase of the new van. And then they're looking for the $18,640 offset that was received from the insurance company for the van, 2019 van that was originally purchased by them and donated to the county. Now, as far as having 2 vans that are relatively new, Andrew and I actually had this discussion a while back before any of this happened. The way that I will manage that is to make sure that I take keys out of there certain days and just rotate the vans to
Keep
make
the
sure that they have
mileage
equal
even.
mileage. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, there's different ways to do it. The other way to do that is to have a little more mileage on one van, so you don't end up purchasing 2 vans
At a time.
at the same time. But yeah, that's the plan moving forward is to equalize the mileage in between the vans.
Are there days when both vans are on the road, one to St. Cloud, one to St. Paul?
Yes. That doesn't happen every day, but it does happen a fair amount.
Well, it's a wonderful program, so
Yep.
I appreciate the help that.
Tim, just a quick question. I see MCIT took care of us on this particular backing insurance-wise, but that was a rear-end collision on our part. We don't have anything hanging out there, or
You mean as far as,
somebody getting hurt from the other vehicle?
not to my knowledge, but I can double check.
I would guess MCIT must take care of that, don't they, Andrew? Yeah,
Yeah, they would, but I was just curious, you know.
I'm sure they do.
I'm not aware that, Paul, that there were any claims from that, but if you'd like, I can,
Sometimes don't ask.
okay, I got that.
That's what I was thinking the whole
Yeah.
time.
That was my point.
I was sitting over here doing this.
And by the way, I didn't mention it, but Steve, you mentioned the wrap. They at the same time, they approved the purchase of the new van from Litchfield Chrysler Center. They also approved a wrap as well, so that one will be wrapped. It looks slightly different because the new van is silver and the other one, the existing one is blue. The same scheme, but different colors to make it work with the silver.
They look sharp if you haven't seen them. They look real sharp. So.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it was the old van that got wrecked. I mean, in this case, not that we want that, but if there's a silver lining,
And the van is silver.
yeah,
Oh, there you go.
no pun intended.
All right,
Thank you.
think we all thank Meeker County Veterans Council for the donation.
Yep.
So,
Mr. Chair, move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
second. All right. Made by Paul, second by Beth. Any further discussion?
I had two questions
Okay.
about the payables, but I think those are questions I'm probably going to have to ask the sheriff. One was about $13,000 for an on-site medical service. I don't know if that's part of a contract,
It is.
part of their,
It's part of a contract that the board has approved, yes.
part of their, okay. Because it said miscellaneous professional service, but
That's just the line item that it falls under in the budget.
they do that.
That's a service we've had for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a newer vendor, but yes. it's a
Okay.
service we've had.
And then there was one called inmate microwaves. I suppose they're replacing something downstairs, but, so those I think are a couple of questions I can get my answers from Brian.
Yes, and that's also being paid for with the canteen funds, which is money that is collected from inmate purchases. So they purchase things, and then that money goes back to pay for things in the jail for the inmates to use.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Julie.
That's all I had.
So there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, Meeker Memorial. Mary Ellen, and that's just Mary Ellen, right?
Ah,
She's definitely not Nicole.
That's,
Leave it at that.
that's Brian.
I can speak to that. Thank you. Mary Ellen Wells, the interim CEO at Meeker Memorial Hospital and Clinics. First off, I want to introduce Brian Leidick, who's with me today. He is the leader of the Southwest Region for Center Care, which Litchfield falls into. So I work closely with Brian, and Brian has a longstanding history as a hospital director. He was at Redwood Falls as the CEO there, and moved into Center Care, and has progressed in his leadership at Center Care. Updates. I can tell you the year. I'll start with Nicole. She's not here right now. She's decided to go back to public accounting and to work for Bailey. We're still looking at potentially having her serve on an interim basis to make sure that we have adequate coverage for financial services. In fact, as I was coming here, I was talking with her, so and she is doing well. But she just felt that her career path was more appropriately toward public accounting.
Great.
So she did bring the year to an end, and I can report, even though we've seen, the figure right now is 60% of hospitals in the state of Minnesota barely, if they broke even, most lost money last year. We are one of the 40%. We didn't make, our net bottom line wasn't huge, but we did better than break even, about a 1% margin. So it's not where we want to be long term, but we're feeling pretty successful given all the circumstances that have played out in the last couple of weeks. I can tell you we still have some contract labor. That's our biggest expense variation, if you need to point to one, where we need people who can fill and take care of our patients because we're having a hard time hiring. And there's just a shortage in many, many different fields. I'd also like to report that we've started a recruitment process. We've identified that we need several surgical areas, increased coverage in surgical services. The biggest one, and many of you know Dr. Tim Peterson, and he and I've been talking and working. We're going to really look for someone who can work with him for the next couple of years and then be a long-term solution, and someone who can serve our needs in Meeker County. We're also looking at expanding orthopedic coverage. We have Dr. Gordon Walker, who's tremendous. We'd like to expand our orthopedic coverage as well, urology, and ENT, and some other specialties as well, if we can increase those coverages. So we're starting to really work with CentraCare as well as others to make sure that we can get the coverage. I think that's it at the moment.
Any questions for Mary Ellen?
I would like to share with you a huge gratitude for our fantastic facility of Meeker County Hospital. 2 weeks ago today, while I was in a meeting here in the courthouse, my husband had an incident with a chainsaw. And he was at the he lost the battle, but it could have been much worse. And he was out in the woods at home, alone, of course. I think that's why women live longer, I don't know. But he got knocked.
I could go into that.
Yeah,
but I won't.
you can show us the scars, Danny.
Yeah, no.
Okay. But he cut his leg
I was
quite,
referring to other reasons, but
Sure. He cut his leg quite severely and ended up needing surgery. And Dr. Tim did a fantastic job, and I just can't express enough my gratitude for our surgeon, surgical staff, the nursing staff, the people at the front desk. He drove himself to the hospital, comes walking in the front door, leg wrapped in a bath towel, and they just embraced him, of course, and then they came to get me, and, but thank you,
I'll pass that on
thank
to
you.
the staff and the doctor.
It was, we are very fortunate,
We are.
very
And
fortunate.
He will be a strong asset in helping to recruit.
Excellent,
Absolutely.
thank you.
all right, thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't one of your good towels.
Oh, well, not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. Talk to you later.
Hence the reason women live longer.
Yeah.
That's where you were going.
I'm
Either
not.
that or they're a little, or that or they're a little wiser. It could be.
Oh, gracious.
All right,
Yeah.
next up,
Am I wrong?
Smalls. I think we got a lot here.
Hour or less.
Oh,
What?
Hope not. Good morning, Bill Schmaltz, Public Works Director. 3 items for discussion and your consideration today. The first is to consider approving a MnDOT detour agreement that includes a number of our roads. MnDOT's got work planned. There was a map in your packet that would show you kind of the work MnDOT has planned in 2024 and 25 on US Highway 12. It's got 3 phases to it. The first phase of the work is tentatively scheduled for July, and it'll be paving and some grading work between Litchfield and Darwin. And the second phase, July to October of 2024, between Darwin and Dassel. And then the third phase would be in 2025 from Dassel east into Wright County. That detour plans to use portions of our facade 14, 34, 11, 21, and 4 during the various phases of the project. In return for the use of our roads as detours, MnDOT will compensate us for calculated road light consumed. It's a standard formula that we use based on actual use. Estimated use, that sum will be about $37,400. And there is a resolution with the agreement for the detour.
So, the one going north out of Dassel, we just did that one, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we did an overlay project north of Dassel last year, and then there's been a 2-year reconstruction in Dassel last year and the year prior, 22 and 23. And then 34, we have a paving project on it this year, but we're purposely scheduling that after the detour is done. They're gonna work in July, we're planning to come in August.
I'll find it, I'll make it. Move to approve resolution approving detour agreement 1055396 with MnDOT for the use of Meeker State Aid Highways 14, 34, 11, 21, and 4 as a detour for Trunk Highway 12 construction.
All right.
I'll second.
Motion by Paul, second by Beth. Any further discussions? I'd imagine if, the one thing we always get is those detours, we get inundated with questions like, are they going by my house? So we just pass them along. Your name?
Can, sure.
That's what
you
I
know.
do.
Yeah, because I never really know exactly where it is unless I pull this up, which is impossible for me to find it.
Just wanna move around a lot, like that first
Okay.
detour is only gonna be probably 2 weeks is the expectation.
Weather.
Weather, yeah.
It's my number one call complaint. So, all right, we have a motion on the floor. Any other further discussion? This is a resolution, so Corey?
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Olberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Bredesen,
Yes.
Commissioner Schiefelbein.
Yes. With that said, resolution pass, and we'll move on.
The second item for consideration is to approve the final acceptance and payment for our 2023 paving contract. So that contract included 3 different projects, one of them on 640th Avenue for Ellsworth Township, CASA 4, so that was the overlay portion that Commissioner Johnson referenced, north of Dassel, and then a reclaim project on CASA 14 from McLeod County up to the south edge of Darwin. All 3 projects were completed under one contract by Dunick Incorporated. The work is complete satisfactorily, slightly under what we had budgeted for, and I recommend approval and final acceptance.
Mr. Chair, I move for final acceptance of payment of 2023 paving contract, which include SAP 047-600-013 and SAP 047-604-016 and SAP 047-614-022.
All right, motion by Steve,
I'll second that.
second by Julie. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Yep.
And for the third item, I have a few slides to walk through. It's to consider authorizing Public Works to set letting dates for our 2024 construction projects. So this is an annual requirement. The county board must authorize what we solicit bids for. This doesn't include every single project we do. For instance, township projects that are funded by township funds, we don't need to go through the process. Smaller quoted items don't go through this process. Our list of projects that fit the category of needing authorization from the board is here. So we've got CASA 34, which I referenced, short stretch in Litchfield here. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about each one as we go further. CASA 2, we have a reclaim and overlay project scheduled. CASA 14, reconstruction in Darwin. And then Manana Township Bridge replacement, and then some paint and chip seal projects. Not a great map, but this is a map of the 4 major projects. The red in the upper left, that's the Manana Township Bridge on 592nd Avenue. The CASA 2 reclaim and overlay project is north of 24 there, kind of upper right of the 3 red ones. Lower right, that's Darwin Municipal Reconstruct, and then the CASA 4 work, or CASA 34 work, is in the middle of the screen in Litchfield. So details about CASA 34, less than 2 miles long. It's just a chunk in town, I'd call it, between Trunk Highway 12 and 24. If you're familiar with that road, the ride quality is poor. So what we're planning to do is a profile mill, or micro mill we call it. It's to mill a thin amount of pavement off of it to improve the ride, and then we'll come back and put an overlay on top. The structure of the road is actually pretty good. It's a strong road, but it rides poor. And that, like I said, we're gonna schedule it after the MnDOT work on 12 is the plan. So August to September is our proposal.
How thick?
The micro mill is gonna vary up to 2 inches.
But how
plan,
big is it?
But then our overlay is gonna be about a 3/4 inch leveling course and then 1.5 inches final lift overlay. So by the time we're done, the expectation is it should ride really well and have comparable strength, or slightly more than it does now. And about $500,000 is our estimate on that project, CASA construction funds.
And that is our highest traveled section
That would be our highest traveled road in the county.
of county.
So usually when that sub level is solid, that's when you go with the overlay,
Yep.
because you don't need to reconstruct that, the
Yep.
base.
If the pavement's too far gone, then we'll be reclaiming it. If the pavement's still in fair condition, or it has enough structure, then yeah, we're looking at overlays.
Okay.
I don't love overlays, but they do have a place in our system.
So was there any more discussion about the roundabout there?
So I just learned this morning that we were not successful in our TED Transportation Economic Development Grant that we submitted last year, but we were told we were close and we should keep trying. There were concerns about the schedule we proposed. So we're gonna get together with our consultant in the city again and plan to target that pot of funding again, in addition to any others that come up in the meantime. But I would say nothing in the next few years. Securing funding and going through, if it's federal funding, the process involved with a roundabout project and the proximity to the railroad and the gas station are all gonna make that a slow process once we do have funding. Second project, so Cassat 2 you saw on the map, that's kind of broke up into two different sections. Cassat 2 north of Trunk Highway 24 in Forest City, that's in really rough shape, so that's a reclaim, we'll grind it up, start over. That's gonna be about $300,000. And then the rest of 2 that hasn't been touched in the recent history from 315th, where the reclaim project leaves off up to 360th, will be a notch wide and overlay. So that's where we notch out some of the existing gravel shoulder, put a block of pavement in there and widen the pavement out to 28 feet versus the 24 that's there today. Keep traffic off of that edge where the gravel starts. Helps us with maintenance and it's a safety improvement. The lane width, so where the paved is, stays where it is today, but you get a little pavement outside the fog lines. And combined, we're looking at about a $1.2 million project. And we'll link those with 34, so that'll be one contract, similar to what you saw this morning with multiple projects in it. Cassat 14 reconstruction, so that's a municipal reconstruct in the city of Darwin. Short project, high cost. That's because of all the underground that has to take place. The majority of the funding on that project, as you see here, is city funds. That's due to the underground and the curb and gutter and sidewalks all being on the city portion of the project. But that'll be a full reconstruct. Scheduled for this summer. The city's consultant is executing the project, so our role is mostly administrative and oversight on this one. Banana Township Bridge, the plans are not fully approved, but I expect them to be in the near future here once we get through some permitting challenges that we're working through. It's a pretty substantial bridge. We have a $1.32 million estimate on it, and I would not be surprised if we're short. Most of the funds for this bridge replacement will come from the township bridge account, which is a piece of our state gas tax. We have money that comes into a Meeker County township bridge account, and then there's a special town bridge account to cover overages. The Meeker County account doesn't have enough funds, but I'm hopeful there'll be enough in the statewide special account to cover the project. If not, it could potentially be delayed another year, because I don't expect that Banana Township wants to be paying for it themselves if they have an opportunity to use the state bridge account money. HSIP edgeline enhancements, so you'll see from time to time we get federal money for 6-inch wide edgeline pavement markings. This is another one of those projects on about 113 miles of our state aid pavement, estimated to be about a $92,000 project. It supplements our routine pavement marking replacement program. Routine pavement marking program here. Estimating about $130,000. I'll tell you that's about double what we had seen before last year. There's been a lack of competition creeping into pavement marking. We used to have 3 contractors and there was 1. We bought out the other 2. Now we've got 1 and there's a local contractor who's starting to get into it. So I'm hopeful maybe that we'll start to see prices creep down, but I know it's not all competition based. Part of it is just materials and labor. Everything's been increasing the last 5 years. Chip seal project, pretty short and sweet this year, just 2 roads, newer pavements, Cassat 14 south of Darwin that was reclaimed last year, and then Cassat 4 that was overlaid and reconstructed from US Highway 12 north. High price tag, there again, similar to paint, the price of our chip seals has gone up substantially the last few years. I still think there's value in doing it on our new pavements, but we are looking a little less favorably on that treatment on some of our maintenance activities. I used to be more apt to put it behind patching and crack filling, now maybe a little less so because of the price.
I've probably asked this before, but how long does that chip seal last and before you should really do it again then?
So our modern chip seals that we're using with crushed granite and the polymer oils, so instead of being plastic, it's basically rubber that's gluing it down. We haven't been recovering existing coverages unless we have a major crack filling or patching project. I know when I started, it was 7 years when we used to use P-Rock, because it would get shined up, you'd lose aggregate. But these are pretty high quality coverages, so if we aren't gonna cover a major patching or crack filling project, maybe never. Might not get touched again until there's an overlay or a reclaim.
Okay, so they're pretty beneficial then,
Yeah.
considering.
And that's why I like to put them on early. It's like, I use the term sunscreen. It protects the underlying pavement from drying out, the sun, the rain, the weather. Well, that is it. I'm looking for a motion to authorize Public Works to set letting dates for our 2024 program.
Mr. Chair, I move to authorize Public Works to set letting dates for the above referenced 2024 highway construction projects.
All right, motion by Julie,
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
second by Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. It looks like winter might be over again, so.
Oh,
Knock on wood now.
Now you said it.
you know, we got March left, doggone it.
Yeah.
At State High School.
The snow that
Yeah.
will stay
Basketball tournament.
might be over. Yeah, we'll still get snow.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Phil.
Yeah.
All right, Greg?
Morning, Greg Schultz, Land Use Director. This morning I got 4 items for the commissioners to look at.
Greg, could I make a couple of comments about the meeting before you make your presentation?
Sure.
That'd be okay? I attended the Planning and Zoning meeting on Tuesday, February 13th. And I was the only person in the audience. I was shocked when the committee took out this form, possible changes to solar regulation sheet.
Mr.
There were
Chair,
about
Mr. Chair,
19
Mr. Chair.
Do we really need to go into this then, Julie?
Well,
Or you can actually say this during your committee report. I don't know if Greg needs to go into this unless you.
If we
It
don't know,
references business that was conducted and how the business was
I think
conducted
the
during
process that we have
that.
at planning and zoning has always been this way, right? The way we run a meeting, I don't
Yep.
I don't
I
think we
thought
should.
this was the perfect time to at least identify what took place at that meeting.
Why?
There were 19 points
Why?
highlighted on this, because I feel what Andrew mentioned when Mr. Olson was here, that,
I think
It's
we
the-
really,
On the agenda.
This
I
is
think
not on
we
the
really
agenda.
need to move on,
well,
Julie, because.
the moratorium was on the planning and zoning
but
agenda,
not
and
the
that's
public
why I
hearing
attended.
part.
This isn't, we're talking about this agenda right now, and I don't know if Greg needs to be inundated with this right now, and.
Short statement. I feel that the zoning and planning committee needs to be informed as to what their responsibilities are in regard to meeting the needs of this moratorium. Because when they sat down at their meeting on Tuesday night, they simply took this list of suggested ideas and they were going right down, one by one, and they said, okay, well, it's currently 750 feet setback.
Well, I'd like to
What-
just.
what do
I'm
you
sorry,
guys
Julie,
wanna
I'd like to
do?
just move on right now because I do not want to run down planning and zoning and
Oh, no.
their means of how they do it because they are elected or appointed and we need to assume that they are going to do their job.
Well,
And we
That's
gotta
why-
we gotta let them do
do
their
their
job.
due
We gotta
due
let them-
diligence,
We
but
gotta
that's,
let them have their public hearing, and that's when you can do all this stuff.
Yep.
But this isn't a public hearing of
But-
planning and zoning meeting.
Julie, were you there as a private citizen or a commissioner?
yes. And I raised my hand and I asked the question,
All right.
what grounds or
I really
evidence
do-
are you making these
Julie,
changes?
I do really need to think we should move on.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I call the order of the day.
Okay,
To Greg.
all right.
thank you, Greg.
First item I got is a CUP for a Ryan and Marla severance on Lake Stella. It's a landscape project. This project, the owners are, looking at putting in 16 yards of riprap, 11 cubic yards of boulder rock, 18 yards of steps and patio, 20 yards of fill dirt, it'll be approximately 65 cubic yards total for this project.
It appears that based on Greg Jans's comment and Derek Schreiber's comment, who visited the site, they felt that this was an appropriate means of protecting the bank. I was reading their comments in here, so.
Most of it's down on the end of the bank, you see from pictures.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, move to approve the application for a conditional use permit to move more than 10 cubic yards of material within the shore impact zone and more than 50 cubic yards of material in the shoreland district of the recreational Lake Stella with the conditions.
all right, motion by Paul, looking for a second.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Steve. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Next.
Next item I have is for feedlot for Jonathan Kramer. This is a project that, what he's doing, he has a feedlot on the east side of the road, now he's gonna have a feedlot on the west side of the road. He's gonna be basically doubling his size of his operations. Currently has a 720 animal unit feedlot and the property contiguous to his property, and this new barn to the west of this site is gonna be a 990 unit, consisting of a new 123 by 225 foot swine finishing barn and 123 by 220 foot by 8 foot concrete pit underneath. So, yeah, they've got the stormwater pollution prevention plan and everything through the MPCA has been permitted. According to Ann Steinhaus, has been found as acceptable for this expansion of his swine feedlot.
Okay,
This is the one you continued at
This
the,
is one we continued from
Okay.
last week, correct?
and it appears you
the
got
main-
those questions answered for
The
the,
main continuation was the biofilter requirement, if you wanted to make that or not. And as was noticed, determined that we probably don't wanna get into that. A lot of times, they work apparently fine from MPCA documents that Ann Steinhaus had. In the summertime, but in the wintertime, they could possibly freeze up and could create a toxic environment for the animals and the staff, perhaps.
When I first read this, the first thing I thought of was the odor. You know, cause I feel like bugs are, right? They can be, so I was a little surprised. Can you tell me a little bit about this biofilter system? Is it not a proven method or?
It's not completely proven, it's more of an R&D at this point, from what I understand. Technologies are emerging as we speak. Like I said, it could possibly choke off the air filtration in the system. And what it would use, it was used organic materials, and from the fans would blow exhaust from inside out through this organic material and filter out the odors. That's the intent for this.
So the MPCA could, in a few years, decide they have to do something or no, or it's just, that's gonna be
Talking to
there.
Ann and Greg Jans, who talked to the MPCA, they both said that the MPCA has not yet forced anybody to do this at this time.
Okay,
That's why if you see in our conditions, we have conditions in place that,
Right.
Say that if something would happen,
Happen
odor
then, yeah.
complaints, we could look at technology, it could be biofiltration, it could be some other filtration to try to hamper the odor control levels.
it's mostly because it's,
part of living in rural America. I
Well,
guess.
and I think it's stated, if I read it right somewhere in here, I probably won't find it right now, but, that's when you agitate and move it.
Yeah, I
mean,
did
that's
read that, yeah.
couple times-
anybody who knows
couple
that,
times
a
a year,
feedlot, even those who own them.
In other words, when you shovel
Any
it, you
different
get
than
some.
any-
You can,
no.
for sure.
So, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the conditional use permit number 16315 for a 990 animal at Class BH swine feedlot located in government lots 13 and 14 of Section 30, Township 117, Range 30 of Cedar Mills Township with the conditions.
All right,
I will second that.
motion by Beth, second by Paul. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item we have is Knife River IUP for a aggregate mining. If you're familiar with this site, this is south of town here about 3 miles, Highway 22. It's been a plant since before 2006, or an aggregate mining site before 2006, had an EAW done back in that time. Knife River has proposed 5 phases for this operation. When it's all done, said and done, it's gonna be about 105 acres total for this site. Right now, I think they're at about 70-some acres, 76 acres perhaps, what they'll be after the end of this phase here, it sounds like. Just the one neighbor to the east, Mr. Malo, just making sure that he wanted to know that it was gonna be similar language as the last permit, and it is similar language as the last, and that the berm between his house and the plant will remain in place. We have a berm up in the northeast corner up there, you can't see it very well on the map, that kind of shields him from the site of his plant, or the plant and the mining from his house, and that's gonna remain in place. That was his main concern.
You really can't see this very well from Highway 22 even. They've got it,
They got it all burned pretty
they
well.
do a pretty good job.
Knife River's always had clean pits, even when I was on planning and zoning and revisited them, they were always well kept,
Yeah, this one's really
well
clean.
kept.
Really no dunnage or anything around there.
All right, looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, move to approve interim use application 16321 to mine, wash, and process aggregate in an A1 agricultural preservation district in part of the southeast quarter, section 1, township 118, range 31 in Greenleaf Township with the conditions.
All right, motion by Paul,
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
second by Steve. Further discussion? All those, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, one more.
One more. Next one is, in the same location, they're asking for an asphalt plant. And this will be, as you can see where it says plant there on the map right there, that's where it's gonna be located. It'll meet all setbacks from the neighbors' properties, and again, the berm height was an issue. Maintaining that berm, maintaining the berms all around so it's not visible from the neighbors is one of the conditions we have in there as well. This will be 30 consecutive days is the maximum they can run this plant. So it's one of the conditions they have in there, and they were okay with that. And one of the conditions that wasn't brought up on this one is that MnDOT now on all these sites on a county state aid road is requiring additional turning lanes to be installed in these operations right now. So that is one of the things that MnDOT wanted us to put in our conditions, which we did in the Knife River. Holly, who was there, said that they've been in contact with Knife River or with MnDOT, and they're gonna put that turn lane in sometime this summer, but not until they get the equipment on site, because they're gonna use their own equipment to install it. That was their comments, so.
All right, thanks, Greg. Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an interim use permit application number 16322 to operate a temporary asphalt plant with recycling and stockpiling of asphalt materials in an A1 agriculture preservation district in part of the Sunset Quarter, Southeast Quarter, SE 1/4 of Section 1, Township 118, Range 31 in Greenleaf Township with the conditions. Sunset.
Well done,
Yeah, thanks.
seasoned veteran.
Yeah.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion by Beth, second by Steve. Any further discussion? All those, please say aye.
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 Motion carries.
I guess we sunsetted that one.
We did sunset that.
And Greg, I appreciate all your work you're doing and along with the planning and zoning on this moratorium. I'm sure more on your workload, but we appreciate it because we just want to get it done right.
Can we have 5 minutes? I need to take a little break.
Beth would like a 5-minute break and I will give it to her.
Thank you.
I don't want to. Yep, we have a report from Andrew.
We are back.
Yes,
MC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you recall, one of the goals that you established for me this year was to keep you in the loop of what's going on at the legislature. And so tomorrow and Thursday, a few of us will be heading down to St. Paul to attend AMC's legislative conference, and included with that is meetings with our our local legislator, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what some of AMC's priorities are, as well as a couple of other issues that have come to my attention that we'll want to address with some of our representatives because of their unique position on some of the committees. And then lastly, a very brief update on kind of a major issue that we're going to be focusing on over the next year. So looking at AMC's priorities, they had 8 of them. We can talk, if there's interest, we can talk about any of these in a little bit more detail, but at a very high level. The first is focusing on mental health and high acuity, and it's putting investments to expand access to mental health services, particularly for individuals with acute needs. The second is modernizing our human services systems, so it's improvements to technology systems that our social services staff uses, and the folks who are here can talk probably a lot about how they need that investment pretty significantly. Supporting a bonding bill with that funding transportation projects. Focusing on drainage, maintaining the current requirements for public notification of drainage work and hearings. SCORE is a recycling grant that we received that's funded by the solid waste management tax. Agencies advocating that 100% of the revenue from that tax go into the SCORE grant. As you recall, last year, the Hennepin County was involved in a Supreme Court case called Hennepin versus Tyler, which overturned the state's tax forfeiture statute. So that needs to be updated, and so AMC is very involved with that process.
Can I just ask that? So can you just refresh my memory? So
Yes.
was that about how far, where the money goes?
It's where the money goes.
Okay.
So the issue with that case was that Hennepin County, and as we've seen in counties across the state, and we've seen it too, when there's a net gain on the property after it's sold, the assertion was that's an improper taking, that net should have gone back to the original property owner and not stayed with the local government. Statute allowed it to stay with the local government, and so the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that it shouldn't, that it should go back to the original property owner. So the state right now is working with AMC and other partners to update that forfeiture statute, and likely what it'll be a judicial process going forward rather than it being done solely through
But they
the
won't go
auditor's
back or
offices right
anything,
now.
it'll just be at the, right?
No, there is also a
That was-
class action lawsuit
Okay, so they want
to go back over a
Wow.
period of time, so that's being worked out as well. And AMC is advocating that this is the state's statute, right? This is
So they should
like
pay
so
it.
many things, we implement what the state tells us to do.
Right.
We don't develop the process, we don't develop the statute. So there's advocacy that the state should cover any of those costs related to the class action lawsuit.
Otherwise, they could come back to each county.
Otherwise,
and
they will
go
come back to each
Wow,
county,
yeah.
which is a much bigger issue for some counties than others.
Remember, we talked about it at AMC, but I couldn't recall
Yes,
it all.
yes,
So that's ongoing, we don't know.
that is still ongoing, exactly.
Thank you.
It's a priority surrounding youth mental health continuum of care, which is intended to identify initiatives to address gaps in the mental health system for juveniles in the justice system. And then lastly, investments in our emergency response systems. So sustainable funding for Next Gen 911, as well as the armor radios, and then also modernizing our medical emergency services to ensure that everyone across the state has 24/7 access to ambulance services. So those are the priorities that AMC is looking at, and we'll talk with our legislators about some of those. We also have 2 senators who serve on the State and Local Government Committee. There have been 2 issues that have come to my attention over the past couple of months that I want to make sure that we address with them. The first is a proposed bill that would require remote monitoring of public meetings, and then remote participation if there's a public comment period. So for us, that isn't a huge deal because we have the systems set up in the room, but we have a number of committees who may meet in other locations. One that comes to mind is our extension committee, where having that technology becomes a challenge. And I think more so, the bigger issue is for a lot of small units of local government across the state, particularly townships, where I know that some of our township offices don't even have restrooms at the facility, let alone
Right.
the capability to be able to broadcast a meeting in a way that can be heard and understood. We've all been on Zoom meetings before where everyone else is in a room and you can't hear what's going on because they don't have microphones set up like this. And so I think there's a lot of practical issues that come along with this proposal, and it's something that we want to make sure that we are involved with in addressing, and so we want to talk with our senators about that. And the second is Minnesota Management and Budget oversees the PEEP insurance program, which, as you know, our sheriff's office staff are involved with the PEEP program. As we've seen over the past few years, there's been some volatility in the rates from PEEP. It had been pretty consistent and stable over time. They've said that because there's been a fair amount of low-risk groups leaving the PEEP pool and seeking lower rates elsewhere, that it has caused them to have to push rates up. And now we saw this last year where rates actually went down. So that volatility is the concern that they're looking to address. They had a study commissioned, which one of the recommendations was a participation mandate. The concern, of course, that we have is if we are required to participate in a pool, we lose out on the local control that we have over what we want to do for insurance for our employees, but also, as participating members in the Prime Health Pool, we have more ability to be able to say how that money is being used than if it was going into a larger statewide pool. Counties may not be affected by this. They may go after smaller groups with a participation mandate. My understanding is that they went through a process like this 10 or so years ago, 15 years ago with schools, and that they were going to potentially mandate schools to participate in this program. So it may just be other groups, but it's an issue that we want to keep an eye on and try and keep counties out of it if we can. So those are the other issues. We have 2 senators who serve on the State and Local Government Committee. Knowing those issues are going to come before them, we want to bring those 2 things to their attention right away so that when they do come up, they understand what our position is on it. And then yesterday, Commissioner Johnson sent me an email with information that Prime West is pushing along with the other county-based purchasing groups for new legislation, which helps to enshrine our rights regarding
County-based purchasing.
County-based purchasing, exactly. So we'll talk with folks about that. And then lastly, we had a call on Friday last week, and there was one item I wanted to bring to your attention, and that is regarding cannabis legalization. The Office of Cannabis Management is working on their rules right now, their rulemaking process, and as they go through that, they're looking to tweak the existing legislation, which is going to affect us in some ways. What they're looking to do is change the timing of the licensure process. How it works right now in statute is that an application comes in, the applicant has to get all their local approvals first, so their zoning approvals, any registration approvals, those things. Then they take all of that package to go to the state, and the state would then issue the license if they met all the requirements. OCM's concern is someone's going to go through all this process and all this expense to get to the state to then not have a license be available or to not be able to meet the state's requirements. So what they're proposing is that they get a preliminary license from the state, they take that preliminary license to the locals, and then they go back up to the state to get their final license after everything's been approved. With that, they're also looking to expedite the process for social equity applicants. So these are individuals who've been negatively impacted by previous cannabis laws. They want to allow them to get ahead in the line, and so they might start issuing preliminary license to those applicants as early as this summer. AMC and LMC right now are working with Office of Cannabis Management on putting together some key considerations for zoning ordinances. So we're going to take the information that they put together along with all the information that we've already gathered from work that other states have done. Planning Commission has already started to review the issue, but it's going to become a priority for them as soon as they finish the solar and wind ordinance discussion. They'll be working primarily on this in addition to all their other applications.
So, to refresh my memory, so they're gonna issue the license state?
Yes.
Then if I'm a Meeker County resident and I wanna sell cannabis, I have to come here? And then we still have our own regulations on who's allowed, where it's allowed, and all of that that forgoes the state?
Absolutely.
You see what I'm asking?
Yes, so the state's not going to be able to come in, well, the way the law is written today is the state can't tell us you have to allow it in this specific space. Okay. We have that responsibility over of time, manner, and place, so we do with all of our other zoning regulations. And as far as I know, is not being proposed to be changed by OCM. So
are they doing this because it's been too slow of a process, or?
No, they hired a national consultant who has worked with other states on legalizing or recreational cannabis. I think I can't remember where we are on I think we're number 23 on for, adult use cannabis. And so there've been a number of states who've gone through this process already. And so this consultant has worked with other states. One of the consultants, it used to be the head of the cannabis office, I think in Maine.
Okay.
And so they have experience doing this. So they're providing some best practices and helping to ensure that the process goes smoothly and that the state of Minnesota learns from the mistakes that other states have made.
Right.
So
Just wanted to make sure the state wasn't gonna overrule the county again.
that
They
that
try
is
to do in so many
as
places.
as they look to change the law, that is certainly one of the concerns that we'll continue
sure.
to monitor is, are we losing rural control, right? If the only change is that they're changing the steps in the process where they get a preliminary license first, which is actually good for us, because
Yeah,
we know
they've done the checking.
we haven't gone through this whole zoning process and the public hearings and all of that for them to then get denied by the state. So
Okay, thank you.
that's what we're looking at as far as legislative issues. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
So is it Paul and Steve going then?
Yes.
And I'm assuming you've already consulted with Meeker Social Services and 3 of those are kind of social service type of issues, everything, you're in sync anyway, I'd imagine.
Well, I know MAXA, who is the Social Services Professional Association, works closely with AMC on these issues.
It's been ongoing issues for us, so Andrew's pretty well aware of the
I'd assume
bumps and
so.
bruises that we're going through.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think as you work on woodlands and such, getting more, bed space, challenges that we have for mental health and getting folks that have those high needs, adequate space is something that you're well aware of. The systems modernization is that we're spending a lot of administrative time feeding a bureaucratic technology system that is really needing to be updated. In
Which
fact,
is,
having done some work recently in it and just doing a time study on myself, watching the system think cost me at least 45 minutes. So now, for me, and then you look at all of our workers that are in that system, the amount of time that it's wasting for them, that's direct dollars that we're spending.
AI is gonna fix all that for you, don't you know?
Well, I don't know about that, but.
Oh, boy.
It could be helpful though,
Well, it's certainly not going to.
eligibility and,
Anything that's going to help us be more intuitive to the work that we do. I mean, we need to manage the system. However, it needs to be usable
Yeah.
for the folks that
That's-
are actually balancing client, customer care with bureaucratic necessity.
I've been going to the last AMC and before that, we were talking about that, and I feel like the gap has gotten wider and not easier, so,
Just one more click.
Yep.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
just one more.
Yeah.
I should have made a cake with that
I know,
saying on
yeah.
it. All of our social workers are also required to have 100% time reporting in 15-minute increments. So if something takes you an hour, you can put that in, but you have to account for every 15 minutes of your time.
Right.
So with those case notes, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 10 clicks, and every time you click, you have to pause. So you're picking this program, then you're picking this thing, and then, it was face-to-face, and then it takes forever. It's ridiculous. Especially given what we see from other technology, right? Like, I don't pause. I just keep going, right? So it does eat up a lot of time when you're having to put that much time into the system.
I'm sure it does.
And the searches and all of those
Right.
things are also difficult, yes.
I attended a session at the AMC annual conference talking about this issue specifically, and there was folks there from DHS talking about how they're tackling this.
Yeah.
And they put up a spreadsheet of all the systems and how it interacts with not only the state systems, but then what we have locally as well. And it was mind-boggling how much is out there and how it's all interconnected. And so and it's one of those things where you break one thing and you don't know how it's going to impact other things. And so it's been a kind of a hodgepodge over the years. And
So
there's
is
a
the
need to
answer gonna
update it.
be to rebuild from the bottom up? I mean,
That's largely
that's what I heard kinda when I was at the AMC.
That's
last time.
largely what they're doing. They're not they're not doing it, what I took out of that session was that they are not taking it as one big system and doing everything at once. They're doing piece by piece so that we can start to see benefit from it sooner and we don't end up with this Goliath that then still doesn't work for us down the road.
It's a mess. I appreciate you guys. It can't be easy. And then you got people calling, how come you haven't gotten what I need? And we're not serving the real needs. That's the, spending too much time.
Our time for customer service.
Absolutely.
Paul, you had mentioned mental health beds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Dakota County has a new 30-bed facility. And then we're looking at like Moorhead, Clay County, I believe is the other. There ain't very many facilities in the state.
Doesn't really crack the seal even of the problem.
Them are mainly the only two within the state, correct?
Right.
Is that was my understanding, so. Yeah,
It's a challenge that I think is gonna take a long time, but we need to start the investment. We won't see the fruits of this investment for 5-6 years. It just takes that long, but we have to start somewhere.
There has been some discussion at Prime West previously about maybe these counties need to start getting together and because everybody has the same issue, right? It doesn't matter what county you're in.
And I believe we invested or gave a grant to up north, one of the reservations.
We did, that was,
West did.
yeah.
I believe, I was in a public safety when they kind of rolled out the Dakota County one here 2 years ago or so, and that was a 30-bed, $30 million facility was the price tag.
$1 million a bed at that time then. But there has been talk about, with our, at least Prime West counties starting to, because we're not getting the help we need with this. It's
that's
just progressively getting worse, so. You bet, you're welcome.
All right.
Steve, you mentioned that you are chair of the
Thanks, Paul.
AMC Public
Tina.
Safety
Have a good day.
Committee.
Thanks.
I called them yesterday because I saw this on our agenda. And I asked them if they had ever had an issue of health or safety with solar or wind. And they told me, and here's the quote, "We are not aware of any conversation related to health and or safety impacts of solar or wind generation at the AMC level." And since you authored the moratorium for Meeker County, I was wondering if that was going to be on the agenda for this legislative session.
I don't believe it is. I believe that Andrew spoke to this when he talked to Mr. Olson there before, that the language,
Public health, safety, and welfare.
the welfare of the public, that's what planning and zoning, that's what we tasked them to do, to look at it. My proposal is to allow them the time, the energy, and the resources to do a good thorough job, to look at this, uncover if there are any. I'm not necessarily waving red flags that, we got a detrimental public health scare out there. But to uncover what some of those issues coming down the pipe could be and make sure that we're being preemptive and setting good policy in place before we have a problem that we never even looked into. So preemptive.
I think Andrew actually answered the man's question exactly,
Well,
and to exactly what we're trying to do in terms of that health portion. It's not exactly health, it's more health of the county in terms of what we're gonna do with the lands and et cetera. moving forward, so.
And I would, my understanding, the moratorium language is a broader language that to cover a wide variety of moratorium issues. So, is everyone pointed directly at solar or directly at wind? Probably not, but the overall language within the moratorium is to cover all those aspects and many more.
And I'd just like to say that the system is set up the way it should be. The planning and zoning does their work. It's a system of checks and balances. They do their work, they have their public meeting, then it comes to us to take a look at it and either approve it or disapprove it or send it back. Am I incorrect in that statement?
Is this
think-
the opportunity for me to
No.
tell you what happened at the meeting on Tuesday night?
Mr.
Because
Chair,
what, you-
Julie, you know what?
Why are
We
you
voted on
so
this.
afraid to hear what's actually happening. I don't understand what the fear is to do some explanations. I attended that meeting and
As
the
a private
planning-
citizen, and now you're speaking as a commissioner, and now
And as
we
a
have voted
commissioner,
on
I
this
am a
moratorium.
private citizen. I'm
Oh,
both.
so
I'm both.
I don't wanna debate this with you. Mr.
One-
Chair, we're
one
gonna talk
minute.
this to Dan, okay, go ahead.
One
Julie.
minute.
Just do it.
Because
and
it's-
And go
You're
ahead.
on the
feel
clock.
so
1
bad.
minute.
Try to remember now that these
Here we go.
people are volunteers and do a
I
lot
have
of
the
great.
floor. I have the floor. I sat
1
here,
minute.
and these people on the planning and zoning, there were only 5 of the 7 members present. Only 1 had attended the public open forum. They took this sheet where there are 19 bullet points, and they just simply started down. Well, we have 750-foot setbacks. What would you guys like? Should we make it 1,000? Should we make it 13? How many restrictions, numbers per 640-acre section? What number should we pick? And they were basing it on nothing. There was no justification, no research, nothing, no evidence of threat to public health or safety. And I finally raised my hand and asked a question. What grounds, what evidence are you making these changes on? The moratorium clearly states that a process of study, which you folks called doing their due diligence, needed to be done before any amending or adopting controls relating to solar or wind systems would be done. God bless the committee, but they obviously do not understand what their
All right,
responsibilities are.
I'm ready to
with
move on. I'm
criteria.
sorry, your minute's up, Julie. I'm not gonna
I don't
sit
know what
here and
this-
lambast
This group is so afraid
a
of.
committee who's volunteering
What
their
group?
time, they're appointed.
I
Moving
wonder,
on.
my wonder
No,
is
I'm
why
done.
you're so
Hey.
interested.
Whose responsibility is it?
You can do this at the public meeting for planning and zoning if you wanna keep continuing this, but we're not gonna give you the floor just to lambast the
Well,
planning
I'm
and
not
zoning and how they go
lambasting.
about it. That's what it sounds like with me. Let's move on.
I'm guessing,
done.
Andrew, that there's a certain routine they go when they start anything. That would be my guess. And I think we should be done with this subject, but to attend one meeting when they haven't even had a public hearing and then tear them down, I'm gonna defend it every time, so I
want to
agree
know,
with you.
when is the research going to be done and by whom? Because
And I just wanna say
nothing
this,
had
if
been
any
done.
commissioner has a financial interest in this,
Absolutely.
they need to take a big step backwards.
You bet. There may be some conflict of interest going on that is a little bit concerning in regard to this entire moratorium.
Well, I will step in as legal
Thank
counsel
you.
for the board. If there's a conflict of interest concern, please be sure that you share that with Andrew or myself so that we can review it. But from my review, and I believe in speaking with Andrew, there hasn't been one that's been to the level where we need to address it. So if there are additional concerns, please make sure you share those.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on the administration report?
I do. So, quick update on where we're at with the remodel project. Furniture is being set up this week on the north side of the building, and then next week, the move-in and move-out process was going to occur. Construction of Phase B, which is the south side of Family Services, not the annex, but the other half of the building, is gonna start March 4th and is expected to take about 10 weeks to complete. At which point, we will also move over there for these meetings. So when we get closer to that point and we have a firm date, we'll obviously communicate that and then communicate that with the public as well. We are planning for the start of the new courthouse entrance, the entrance that's gonna come onto the building over here. We're gonna start that once the ground thaws, so March, April. I was gonna say tomorrow, there's still snow on the ground.
Yeah.
But in the coming weeks, that construction's gonna start. With that, I'm actually meeting with our construction managers today to take a look at what their plans are for staging at this site. It's gonna impact parking at the building here, which we know is already tight. One of the things I intend to have a conversation with the sheriff about is we have a number of folks who live in the neighborhood here who park in our lot overnight, and so want to explore the opportunity of restricting overnight parking to only those who have business at the county buildings, unless I hear objection from the board about that.
So are they downtown apartments or
Must
something?
be.
I see we use center parking sometimes for some of our.
We do,
people.
yes, we do. Our staff parks over there. We have a handshake agreement with Center Bank, and they've been
There's
very
always
generous to allow us.
an issue with parking, but there's that other lot over there probably they could be directed to. I think one thing we do have to bear in mind is we have to make it as convenient as we can for the taxpayers, for any business they have to come here. And that
Absolutely.
means the front or whatever is open, the employees, staff should not park there.
Yes, that's something that we've been talking about. We've also had conversations with Barb about when the election comes up, particularly in August when we have the primary.
Right.
If we have competitive local primaries, it may be fairly busy, but definitely is going to be busy in November when we have, you know, the 6 weeks of early voting leading up to it, plus obviously election day and the first Tuesday of November. We've had a couple of conversations with Contegrity about that already. This entrance likely will not be open for at least a portion of that early voting period, so we are going to have to direct people to the front of the building. We've talked about how are we going to address accessibility issues, because there's not a push button on that door. So we're fully
And then
engaged.
staff will beware. I mean, they get here first, and then if they take up the prime spots, which
absolutely.
happens now sometimes, then that makes it tough for the elderly people that have to, I mean, I don't mind walking, but
No, of course.
And election has to be here throughout November.
It will be
because of
here
statute.
because we've already identified that.
Yes, yes.
So, just refresh my memory, when we're all done with the project, this will be a secure entrance building.
Correct.
yes.
Anybody come.
The public will only have access through the secure entrance, that's correct. Yep. The entrance on Sibley will be closed. Staff will have access through there, but the public will not.
Okay.
The question is gonna be always, what are we gonna do at night for meetings? I don't know
Well-
if we ever solved that.
Well, a number of those meetings will take place at the other building.
Okay, that will solve it.
Because the basement meeting rooms will no longer be
No,
used for
They can still
public?
be used, they can still be reserved and used by the public for public meetings, absolutely.
Oh.
But we also are gonna have additional space over at the other buildings, so in the evening, that may be the preferred spot for folks.
Okay,
We'll have options.
Yes.
okay.
We, in your packet today, you'll notice that I made some changes to the monthly fund balance report as we merged social services and public health into a single fund. It provided an opportunity to change a couple things around. I added a memo in there that explained what those changes were. I hope it was clear. If it was not, please, we can talk offline. But it just does make it a little bit more difficult to look apples to apples at some of those funds to previous years. So just be aware of that. And then lastly, we are gonna have a work session next week. It's gonna be a busy work session. We have 4 items on the agenda. We are gonna talk about housing project that we've communicated about in the past, parking over at Family Services, suicide prevention grant and our efforts related to that. And then lastly, an update of where we're at with the public lands and PILT discussion that we had a few months ago.
So is it necessary to have all 4 on this work session being or can we have some time? I mean, that gets long with that many.
Yeah, I mean,
First one may take a while.
it may take a little bit. I do wanna move on the second one fairly quickly because, Lisa's a part of that discussion. and
Right,
she'll be
right,
here
right.
too. We could push the public lands and PILT discussion.
I mean, I
Can
don't
we
know,
always
may-
table that at the work session
absolutely.
itself?
Okay,
maybe
there
we'll
you
leave
go.
it at
We'll
that.
see where it leads.
Sure.
Play it by
That's
ear.
fine too.
And if we can wrap them all up, great. If it gets too long, let's move on.
Okay, good.
Exactly.
That's fine too. Thank
Okay.
you.
One last question, and you're maybe gonna present that at the work session, did you find out anything about that gas station that they pulled the tanks out of? All right, thank you.
Okay, all right, that concludes my report.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Now I'm
wrong mouse.
assuming most of the remodeling's kind of staying in budget other than that one particular time,
Yeah,
for the most part.
exactly.
Great to hear.
Yeah, we've had,
Except for that 800,000 that we didn't wanna tell you about, Danny, otherwise it's been good.
not even close
It
to
was
that.
only 6.
It's only, sorry,
Oh,
I
it
was
was
off, it was
only
only 6.
We've had,
Making me start
Little
taking
levity
blood
there.
pressure medicine.
Why not? I am.
No? I'm 50.
I thought that's what was in that phone too.
Yeah, that's the opposite.
we've had,
That's happy.
That's
we've had a
it.
number of minor changes, things that we've noticed as we've gone along the way of, well, we should take care of this while we're here. There've been a couple of other things that, especially on the north side of the building, as we've finished up, we've looked at and went, oh, I wish we would've, some light fixtures, we wish we would've replaced.
That's always
The
gonna be.
newer light fixtures, when you get in there, it's gonna be amazing. So, after our work session on the 27th, move-in will be occurring at that time, but it'll be a good chance if we wanna go over there and see how the furniture looks, and there was a, there was a comment that was made about the color when we walked through
That was
before.
me.
There's been some accent walls that have been
Thank
put
you.
in,
I
and
think
they
I'll
look,
like it much
they look
better
really
now.
nice. Looks very nice. They've done. a
I
very
only
nice
can look at that stuff. I don't know about the rest of it.
Thanks for the hint, Steve. I know exactly
good
what that
German.
meant.
Good
Had
subtle
something to
German.
do with the work session last time. I missed it by a week.
Thank
All right.
Out.
Being a good diligent commissioner I am. Let's start with committee updates, and let's keep it to committees, and we'll start with Beth.
Okay, so I had CHB, on the 8th, I believe it was. We talked a lot about grants. The biggest discussion was about foundational public health grant, that a new grant that came out this year, and I think it was for $140,000. Don't quote me, I don't have the exact figure in front of me. The discussion was what to do with that grant, and it ended up that they are hiring another employee to do work on the foundational principles. I'll just be honest with you, there's gonna be some data gathering in there and stuff. They're gonna be advertising now. I didn't understand it all by the time we were done. It was a whole bunch of stuff. Julie can add to it if she did. So they're gonna be advertising, I think it'll be called a community planner. The wage will be eat up between, and then, the CEO will also, Kaiser will have more time in, that's gonna come out of the grant, and with the office and the setup, it's gonna eat up the grant, so we'll see how that
100,000,
goes.
didn't we figure that?
There was a ship update that was interesting, Brent did, about the bicycles that they've had out in the community and things like that. WIC has their 50-year anniversary, so that was an interesting presentation. I've always been a fan of WIC, so that was good. I had CMJTJS, I can't even remember the initials anymore, but jobs and training, that was kind of back to normal. They appointed a new CEO, and that is, I believe her name is Dinah. She's been the interim since Barb left, so they're gonna use her and not have their CFO has resigned, I believe, so they're gonna be trying to fill that also. That was about the extent of that. We had hospital yesterday. Kind of went over the same as what we talked about today, but except for the board did unanimously vote to donate the property with some contingencies. This is just the very first step, so we'll be talking about that at our work session. I had a Woodland Board meeting. They've opened a urgent care in Lacoparo County. They've rented some space at Madison. They're there 2 days a week, I believe. They're starting substance use assessments at Chippewa County Jail. They have a partnership with the jail and social service. Some of the things they're looking at is, of course, to try to increase our rates, move some functional assessments. They're kind of, with the legislative session, they just went over some of the objects that they want to study. And there's a Kids Connection experience in Wilmer. That's on Tuesdays from 4 to 6 in February to April. That you go to the mall there and they have some different things for kids. That's open to everybody. And mental health awareness walk, May 18th from 1 to 3 at Smith Park in Montevideo. And I think that's all I have.
Thanks, Beth. Billy.
Our last reports were given on the 6th. And township meetings were then held that afternoon in the basement. And it was well attended. Our presenters did a very nice job. That was well done. Then on Wednesday the 7th, I had an aquatic invasive species meeting here. They figure about $113,000 should be coming into the AIS fund this year. They voted to hire Waterfront Restoration again for next year for their lake inspections. And the grants opened on the 18th now and will go through April 15th for grant applications. Then on Thursday, the 8th, we had the CHB, 3-County Public Health Board. Beth gave a nice report on that. A lot of things were discussed, and we're not always in agreement, but that's how that went. Then on the 13th, of course, I attended the Planning and Zoning, and I just am very hopeful that they do their due diligence and research instead of this going down a list and making, based on opinion, additional controls and regulations. That was so obvious at the meeting on the night of the 13th. And I don't know who needs to inform them as to what their responsibilities are, but whatever changes are made needs to be based on research, justifiable, unbiased information. So I'm just hoping that the Planning and Zoning Committee is informed of their responsibility, because I, for one, will be looking for documented evidence for any justification of current regulation changes. Then on the 14th, we had our local public health meeting here. Then on the 16th, we had a ditch meeting. That was here. And today we have our regular county commissioner meeting, and this afternoon at 1:30, we have the University of Minnesota Extension meeting. That's out at the fairgrounds. Did you write that down, Danny?
Yeah, I just did.
And then on the 22nd now, coming up, there is the AMC is offering a webinar on solar for public buildings. There's a grant program, $4.3 million is available, but not to Meeker County because we have a moratorium on any additional applications. And that is my report.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Move on, Paul.
Okay, had a ProWorks meeting, after our commissioner meeting and township meeting day. We're very lucky. ProWorks does tremendous things in our community, and we are one of the few, that is still in the black. We have managed, the staff there has managed to keep us in the black, and aside from that, do a great job of providing service to our, I guess we could call them clients there. We now have a full new fleet of vans. Evidently, Atwater Ford got in enough vehicles, they bought ahead, that we were able to fill our complete needs of vehicles now. So we're running with a good set of wheels. No matter who gets behind the wheel, we've got something that's safe. Then went to Alex for the drainage conference, and Steve was there also, and so was Matt, our new ditch inspector. You know, we're really very fortunate because those rules are very complicated. That might be making an understatement, Steve.
Were you sleeping through it?
I'll tell you what, it's,
I know.
I'm just glad that we have the folks that we
Absolutely.
can call on and rely on
Absolutely.
when we're making these decisions, such as Kale. And Barb's got a vast amount of experience and so forth. So very thankful for them. It was a good 2 days, a lot of information.
The one thing that I pulled out of it was some of the, I can't remember which county was up on the platform or whatever, but if it's an assessment of $500 or less, they do not allow you to, you have to pay that within that year.
Sibley.
Was that Sibley who was up there at that time? So that was something, I know we don't necessarily notice if it's under 100 or 150, I can't remember what that.
I think it's 100.
100, but I don't know if we have a policy on that. So that was one item that so you don't get to finance it over 10 years if it's $500 or less.
And she did not indicate that they get any pushback on that,
Yeah, well, and it's just something I think it'd be interesting to see
where we. fit
how
in.
we look at that or how that fits into our system.
So I think it's kind of similar to the way that we do the billing, where so right now we send out bills if it's over $100, and then
Yeah.
it just goes on the tax bill if it's under $100.
Yep,
It'd be very similar if we bumped it up to $500. It goes on their tax bill. Now they can't finance it over that period of time. So
correct. Good assessment.
Yeah. So, then I had a PAC meeting down in Renville County, at their meeting. I just wanna say, we have a lot of employees who represent our county in a fantastic way. A lot of them, but Tina Schenk was down there and.
Does a great job.
I tell you what, she just garners respect from everyone there, and I just wanna say thank you to the staff over there, cause I know they do hard work, but Tina really does represent us very, very well. Then we had a great opportunity, Beth and I, we were over at CCT to, shall we say, welcome the new
Yeah,
van.
it was fun.
We got, they were awarded that $80,000 Prime West grant. And we have a brand new Chrysler van, which, the gate opens up in the back and you can go right up with a wheelchair. So it's very accessible to someone who is physically challenged. They can go to Mayo for a day, or to the cities, or wherever. It's all done by volunteer drivers. And, this is a brand new van. It, hasn't even really
Shiny
been
new.
used yet. But, we got to be there with the, our executive director and Ron Dingman from the city, to kind of cut the ribbon, so to speak, although we didn't have one. But it was just nice to see, because this is all done by volunteer drivers. And now they're driving a vehicle that is brand new, safe, and they're gonna be able to put someone that is physically challenged into it very easily. So that was kinda good. Then yes, we had the JD 17 meeting on the 16th. Yesterday, the hospital meeting, I was very, very impressed with all the research they did for creating the job description
For the CEO.
for the CEO. He interviewed 16 different people, is that what he said?
I think it was more than, he interviewed a
'Cause
lot
it
of
was-
staff. and-
Yeah, a lot of staff to get their opinion. He interviewed all the board members, and then compiled all of that to, as they wrote the new job description, which is a little bit different than the one that was used when Kurt was hired. So, and they laid out the timetable, and what the expectations were. So, hopefully, we'll see a new CEO by June 1.
Maybe, we'll see.
See, Beth is one of the, she'll be on the executives committee that does the screening and so forth. So her and Brian that was here today.
So with Nicole leaving, does the CFO, is that taken care of by the Meeker, because she wasn't through Centricare,
We
right?
will use Centricare to assist us with this.
Oh, okay.
However,
So,
it
we're
is
t-
actually a.
she went to work for Ide Bailey, and we're trying to get her back 2 days a week. But we don't wanna have any conflict with Ide Bailey, because they also did our annual audit last year, so there's just some missing pieces that we're trying to fix.
Sure.
And then hopefully, she wanted some different life balance, which I understand, but, so hopefully she'll come back, and then Centricare has always got people that they can help, and they've been very helpful in that area, so I'm sure it's gonna be fine.
Do they have
We'd
a
like-
timeline for hiring of a CEO?
The CEO, no, we're looking at maybe June, and the other thing is, we want the CEO, we think it's important that they find their own CFO, we don't,
I see.
that's an important position, and that they should be in on it. So we'll see, there's more to come on that, for sure, so.
That's it for me.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
And I
Steve?
just wanna say quickly, volunteer drivers are really needed. And they do a great job, so we're able to get our people out of the territory for CCT. And they might go to Centricare or Mayo in the morning and not get back till the middle of, but like our veterans van, it's the same thing. So if anybody's interested, they're always looking for people, and I mean, the paper was there, they were fascinated by it, they may be doing a story on it.
Article on
And,
volunteer
you
drivers.
know, I just wanna thank the ones that do it because it's really, really helpful for our citizens.
So they drive a person down to Rochester, let's just use it for an example, they spend the entire day there.
Yeah,
The only thing we give them is
little
a small
money.
stipend for one meal.
yep, that's it. If they take their own vehicle, they get
They
some
take their own
mileage.
vehicle.
So you got, you know, it's really volunteerism at its best, so we appreciate it,
Yeah, and there's a lot of that within the community, within the county,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
with
So,
the vet services and,
yep,
you know, CCT, so. Important program.
Good point, Beth, thanks.
All right, I'll go quickly here. Drainage conference in Alex, township meeting, we talked about that downstairs with all the townships. Drainage conference in Alex, we pretty much covered that. And then, Mac, Loken was up at the conference too. I think that was very good for him, cause he's still, awfully new to the county. And then we had a JD Ditch 17 meeting, here last week. And I think and Mac was here for that as well as Candioi County. They have a new ditch inspector and new administrator over there and a lot of new folks within a couple counties here. So, kind of good to have everybody in the room and Mac is getting his feet wet with a couple, issues within the ditch systems that we need to address. So, all that is good. I think good experience for him and kind of baptism by fire a little bit. Other than that, AMC meetings come up, legislative conference this week, starting tonight with MRC, and then I'll finish with an AMC meeting on Thursday afternoon, and Wednesday is our legislative day at the Capitol. So
you're going down today?
yeah, there's a 5:30 MRC meeting.
You're going today too?
Done
You
that.
guys when are you coming back?
We'll come back Thursday, well, it's over at 1 o'clock on,
Yeah,
roughly.
I have a AMC at the end, MRC to start and AMC at the end, and they
Okay.
tag them together.
Sure,
So
well, I
you-
appreciate you guys going, it's good somebody does.
And that's and it's FFA week, so I wear my FFA.
Hey,
Oh, nice.
Very good.
All right. With that said, I'll adjourn.
Why don't you wear your FFA coat?
do you have an FFA?
I don't have.
I still have
I wear my
mine.
dad's.